When lawmakers return to Washington tomorrow, they will have less than a week to pass a funding bill and avoid a government shutdown.
That is true. While House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says he's confident a new series of appropriation bills will indeed pass, thus funding the government, the White House is warning federal agencies to prepare otherwise. In the event of a shutdown, roughly 4 million federal workers will face delayed paychecks and furloughs, and some federal offices will have to close or face shortened hours. Essential workers will be required to work with paychecks on hold. Those essential workers include more than 1 million active duty members of the military, law enforcement officers, air traffic controllers, and TSA officers.
Those measures could lead to massive delays and disruptions to air travel, clinical trials for medications, passport application processing, and access to national parks and tourism sites, and much more.
For more on all of this, CBS News correspondent Skyler Henry joins us now. Skyler, good to see you. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy did sound optimistic as he arrived at Capitol Hill this morning. Let's take a listen to that.
All these bills have gone through committee. The Senate has now taken theirs through committee. Unfortunately, the Senate has not passed any appropriation bills. So let's get this going. Let's make sure the government stays open while we finish doing our job, passing all the individual bills and getting this done.
All right, Skyler. So these 12 appropriation bills that allocate money that's already been budgeted by Republicans primarily, by the way, they're going to be voted on Tuesday. They have to pass to avoid the shutdown. If only some of them pass and it's a partial shutdown, what do we know about what's in the ones on Tuesday and their likelihood of getting through?
Yeah, well, Tony, Lilia, this ultimately comes down to funding for 4 different departments: Defense, Homeland Security, Agriculture, and for the Department of State, in that this money that was previously agreed to ultimately just needs to be dispersed. But what we've seen time and again is just the lack of an appetite in terms of getting these appropriations bills passed. In fact, they have actually failed several times over the course of the last several weeks. Now, what is happening here is simply lawmakers running out of time. It's why we saw House Speaker Kevin McCarthy working over the weekend trying to find some common ground with his Republican colleagues in terms of trying to move these measures across. And if they can't, then of course try to look to see if there could be a stopgap bill that could be passed in order for lawmakers, in order to try to get something done and allow them to kick the can down the road, if you will, in terms of allowing them to have more time to negotiate and see what is what. But we've heard from some of the more hardline conservatives that they do not have the appetite for that. Democrats that we've heard from on Capitol Hill have said that they've held up their end of the bargain in terms of what has been agreed to up until this point. But the truth of the matter is McCarthy can really only afford about 4 no votes because of that razor-thin majority the GOP has in the House of Representatives. And what we've seen is a small but let's call it mighty group of hardline conservatives ultimately come out to say that they want to see more cuts. They're actually opposed to some of the language in some of the bills altogether. If you take a look at money for defense, for example, right, where there is a proposal to have an additional $300 million to be sent to Ukraine, well, that is something that some of those hardline conservatives, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, names that we've heard of, they say that they simply do not want to see happen, whereas some of the other Republicans are much more willing to go along with that plan. But I think it's just a matter of time to see what ultimately comes out of this. Obviously, you talked about lawmakers returning back here tomorrow. We know that the Senate is also proposing some sort of measure. We heard from Leader Chuck Schumer, who talked about that and said that they will propose a measure to try to at least keep the government temporarily open. It has bipartisan support. They will introduce that tomorrow as well. But a collision course, if you will, in terms of running out of time.
You know, Skyler, part of what those hardline Republicans were using to pressure Kevin McCarthy is this idea that he can be ousted. Talk to us about the likelihood of that happening. How much power do they actually hold in holding him against the wall in that sense?
Well, it's a good question. It's one that has certainly come up time and again. I talked about that measure that the Senate was proposing in terms of looking to try to keep the government open that Leader Schumer had talked about. We've heard from several Republicans in the House who've said that if that measure were to pass, then they would start to look more aggressively about the possibility of ousting Leader McCarthy from his position. We've also heard from several of those hardline conservatives who's talked about things that they want to see in these appropriations bills, and that ultimately being the thing that allows them to sort of come up with a decision on whether to remove Leader McCarthy. Even Democrats, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was asked about that on Face the Nation by Margaret Brennan, who ultimately said that there is room to have that dialogue, but the reality is that their main priority, lawmakers that is that they want to keep the government open, and they only have a short amount of time to try to find some common ground in order to do that.
Skyler Henry, thank you.
You bet.